Hi, thanks for talking to me today. I appreciate it. So Kyle, can you start out by talking about where the idea for the film originally came from?
Oh yeah. Well, in 2019, myself and Adam and Kyle Henry and some of the other guys from the cast of Out of Exile, we had done a short film called Prone to Violence. It's like a 10-minute short. Um, Different character names, but sort of the same sort of world. And then after that, I remember we went out to dinner, me and Adam and Wilson Navis, who ends up playing Marcus in Out of Exile. We were having dinner and we were just talking about what's next. And Wilson and Adam sort of challenged me into, hey, you should turn this into a feature. And so in 2019, late 2019, I had written into a feature film, and then my reps read it and they wanted to take it out on the town in LA. So it went out for a little while. We had some interest from some producers in Atlanta and Paramount. Uh, Funny enough, and then but then when when COVID hit in early 2020, I sort of put a halt on a lot of like production stuff in LA at that time and everywhere. But I remember I came back to Oklahoma, and it might have been close to summertime, and I just remember thinking to myself, like, I just want to go do something. I want to go make a film and just try to figure out how to navigate sort of COVID world with regard to making films, and how do we do that still. And but we, it's Jacob, my producer, Jacob Snovel, the actors, when I started talking to them about this, and some of the investors, and I guess not a lot of people were working at that time, so
Yeah.
they, everybody was very, very eager to go do it, and which was surprising, and everything just sort of kind of came together real quick over the summer, and we were filming by October of 2020. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I guess Adam disappeared again. So Haley, how did you become involved in the project?
Um, I had worked on a movie in Oklahoma with Jacob Snovel, Kyle's producer, on a different movie. And so I want to say it was April, like in like the most, like kind of the most intense part of the pandemic, Jacob had reached out and said, "Hey, we're not really sure when we're going to be able to shoot this, but would love if you would be interested." And I read it and was like blown away by it, and was excited to there were several Zooms that Kyle and eventually Adam and I had, where we kind of talked about the character, and when all of the filming regulations and stuff worked out. It was amazing to be able to finally shoot it.
Okay, great. You said you were blown away with it, but what was it particularly that kind of that you were drawn to with the role, with the script?
I was really impressed with Dawn, the character that I played. I really liked her. Her fierceness and her strength, and I enjoyed the opportunity to be able to kind of embrace her anger a little bit. It's not an emotion that is normally very I don't know. It's female anger is a fun emotion to be able to kind of explore in performance for me, and so I enjoyed that.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was going to say Adam's still not there. Okay, so Kyle, what was like the hardest? Let's first say, other than the pandemic, what was the hardest part about sort of bringing the film to life?
Well, I think my producers. There was definitely a conversation that was had when we decided to move forward with making the film, where they're like, "Kyle, you have more locations than shooting days.
Oh,
How do you when there's 36 locations or 37 locations, we have 20 days to shoot this movie? Like, how are you going to do this?" And it was just one of those things where, luckily, we sing praises to my talented cast. We were lucky enough to rehearse and spend a lot of time, 2 to 3 months, of sort of just intense character stuff and rehearsing sort of the strategic blocking of the action set pieces and stuff like that. And so those things were all, would be, I would think those things were very hard to pull off if we weren't able to have the time to sort of rehearse and stuff like that. But I mean, I think the biggest challenge outside of COVID and sort of budget restrictions, because the movie's, small budget, was just how do we accomplish this? There's so much going on, there's so much movement. And so to a testament to the crew and to the cast, they were so talented, and we just had to be able to move in a way where when we got to the next place, we were able to just kind of zone in, hit it head on, and we were, I don't know, it just came together. So it makes it look so easy when we see the film, but there was definitely some anxiety about a lot of the locations and stuff like that. I think that was one of the biggest hurdles.
All right. Well, at least you can't tell when you watch it anyway. All right, Adam, now that you're back, how did you get involved from the beginning?
First of all, Jamie, please accept my sincerest apology.
Don't worry about it.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I'd met Kyle at a film festival several years ago, and recognized him as a talented storyteller. It was just a short film that I saw then, and I knew two things: one, that this guy could tell a story, and two, he's kind of a jerk. And so I was like, well, I probably should work with him at some point. And we kind of talked about getting together on a project at some point or another, and then he had put together a short film that was sort of the basis of Out of Exile. And I don't know, whenever he wrote Out of Exile, I was blown away by the script. He and I, he says we speak a similar cinematic language. I think we like a lot of the same movies, and I think we're driven by a lot of the same motivations of characters. He's very interested in redemption and broken families and making good, and those things compel me as well. So it was really the kind of script that I read, and I was like, man, I've got to be a part of this, and I'll do whatever it takes for that to happen.
All right. Well, I was going to ask you what it was about the script, Hayley, but you kind of answered that. So let me ask you this, Adam, then. What was kind of the easiest and hardest thing to connect with character-wise?
Well, it's funny that she's sitting here. I can't relate to robbing banks, but I can speak. I can speak to being a father, and so that aspect of it was kind of how I wormed my way into Gabe's point of view, understanding, wanting to make good as a father, and then wanting to protect. And to the point of that being a kind of a turning point for the character, ultimately kind of his Achilles heel in a sense. The guy could have made it free and clear with no problems if it wasn't for what made life worth living. And I thought that was very interesting, and that drew me to the character.
All right. Well, Hayley, what about you? What did you find easy and hard to connect with in your character? The anger. You like the anger.
No, yeah. Again, that well, that's not something that I normally like. I don't, it's just not something that, like, as Hayley, I normally am like super in touch with. It's like an antisocial kind of behavior, and so I normally am. I very much like edit myself and make sure that I and so that was kind of it was definitely a challenge for me, but a really fun thing to explore. And I think the thing that made that I didn't anticipate was how much love I was going to be that Adam and / Gabe was coming at me with, completely took me off guard, and it made it a lot, because underneath that anger is hurt and neglect, and that made the emotion, the love and like the child that was just like desperately wanted that love, it made, I don't know, it just made it so much more emotional, and like that that was the easiest, like that was the easiest thing. Like the emotion came so easy, like in working, like doing this scene with Adam. Yeah, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So
it's hard to be angry at Adam.
well, that works.
Yeah.
I know that you said it sounds like you didn't have as much time maybe to film this as you originally had, but Adam, did you get time, like did you do any like weapons training or anything like that for this? Was there time for that kind of thing? What kind of prep was there in that sense?
Yeah, that was kind of the beauty of it being independent. I think that if Kyle was able to exploit his actors by making us go to training for months before filming, there was a real desire for us to connect. So Kyle Henry, who plays Wes, Wilson Novice, who plays my best friend in the movie, Kyle and our armorer Matt Moulton had very specific plans on our training. So the gun training was we spent a lot of time working on gun safety, learning how to our way around those rifles that we were using, getting on a range, and then doing like tactical training, entering rooms and stuff that we didn't even, tactics that we didn't even incorporate in the film. We were learning how to do just to try to make our knowledge of it a little less shallow than just, okay, practice this one thing. We're going to choreograph this specifically. Kyle also had very specific ideas on what he wanted our characters physically to look like. So Kyle Henry, I know, lost a lot of weight and started smoking, shaved his head. I tried to do a bunch of pull-ups and push-ups and grew out my hair and beard. And that's the beauty of what we were talking about this earlier. There's a beauty to the independent aspect of it, where those of us that were here were able to really plant those seeds deep months and months before. And then you have the moments like what Hayley was discussing, where I had never really met her in person. We come in, we had spoken on Zoom, and then we have these scenes where she's knocking me out of my socks with this vulnerability and pain. And so it was like I had the best of both worlds. We had the prep, but then you also had the sort of the all of a sudden inspiration. So I don't know if I answered your question or not, but it was just a blast to be a part of, Amy.
Did you, for both of you though, did you have, I guess, because you made me think about it when you're saying about Zoom, is it hard coming in and playing like father-daughter without having like that in-person interaction at first? Or is Zoom for that kind of thing enough?
Well, we didn't, in the movie, we really haven't, we are pretty disconnected. We don't have that relationship. So it really, I would say that actually helped, because there was like an unpredictability. We both had kind of individually prepped these this like history and like the emotions behind that distance. And so that's I think it wound up being very, very helpful for me, at least, because I had no idea what I was in for.
Right.
It made like the emotions a little bit more explosive, I think.
That makes sense. Adam, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, if I had been given the opportunity, I would have ruined it, because I would have
Me too. I love rehearsal.
Let's rehearse and let's go over it and over and over it. I had that sort of camaraderie and understanding with the gentleman in the film that I'm very close to. So having that, where I knew of Hayley, I knew of her work, I knew of her reputation. I was intimidated, a little bit to work with her, excited about that. And so it just sort of gave this instant sort of, there was sort of like an instant urgency to it. Like we're going to meet each other as our characters are trying to reconnect. And so that was very authentic, and it made it just feel very real. And so the emotions weren't practiced. It was just, oh my gosh, she just cut out my heart, and we got to go to a take two. Like, I'm done. Like you just bled me,
Yeah.
So I think it was very fortunate, because I would have ruined the hell out of it.
All right. that makes sense. Kyle, going back to not having, as much time as maybe you wanted and being sort of low budget, was there something in particular that you can think of that maybe you couldn't do or you had to cut or something just, for logistical reasons?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the hardest thing shooting during a pandemic and having such a movie that needed to feel authentic and urgent, and I think one of the setbacks of that would be having sort of like being able to populate certain scenes. We wanted a lot more, I think, presence from we met with them several times, and it's not their fault or anybody else's fault. It's just the circumstances that we were dealing with at the time. No one really had the right answer.
Mm.
But it's like working with like police and fire departments and stuff like that, EMS, stuff like that that we spoke with, and it was hard to get them to be there in those types of moments where it needed to sort of populate bigger moments like investigation scenes or stuff like that, to give more of a presence to those investigation moments and things like that. It was just hard. There was no one had the answers on how to like define that or how to fix it. And everybody, just that time, I think we were one of the first productions actually sort of kind of kick off in Oklahoma on the independent side. So everybody was still trying to define how do we do this. But yeah, those were some of the things that, thinking back on it, I even cut a few scenes from the movie just because I would have liked to have a bigger background presence. And just those restrictions, we just couldn't do it. It wasn't a budgetary thing. It was just, it's COVID related.
I was going to say, you're lucky though. You didn't have like a scene that had to have like a huge crowd of people. At least you got away with it for the most part anyway.
Yeah, we had COVID coordinators and we were very, very like strict with the protocols that were in place, and the testing and the sort of keeping your distance on set, or using the different sort of things that they would buy for us to use, like the masks and hand sanitizers, and constantly being swabbed. And it was interesting. We followed all those things per SAG and stuff like that. This was my first feature narrative film, and so to come in to do that with all those sort of restrictions, and it's already hard to make movies, and then you're trying to navigate sort of all of that. It was tough, but we got through it.
Well, maybe the next one will be a piece of cake then. You won't have to, at least it's not quite as bad now. Maybe we'll see. Hayley, I wanted to ask you about the makeup, the bruises, because that, it looked really good. Can you kind of sort of talk about that process and how long it took for that?
Yeah, how long did it take? Like maybe less time than you would think. Our makeup team was very talented. Katie and Tony was the designer. It definitely helps you kind of get into that zone, because like they had like this stuff on I had like a big black eye, and it really does like move, like the prosthetic stuff limits movement, and kind of mimics that the swelling that would be present if I had been beat up like that. But it, like, seeing it is really it does like elicit an emotional response for sure. They're that team is very, very talented. And I want to say it only took about an hour, maybe a little over an hour.
Yeah, I definitely would have thought longer than that.
Hey, I don't like what time you guys might know more than Kyle. You might know more than I did, because it's always a thing where like we need we need them on set. I want to say an hour and a half.
It was a pretty smooth process and stuff, but yes, there was a lot of time restrictions, and I remember there's times where we were just moving from location to location because there were so many locations that sometimes I remember there was a couple of moments where as you were getting put in makeup, I was sitting there talking to you about the next scene and
yes,
as soon as we moved from that location soon as we get there, it's like kind of like cameras are up, cameras rolling.
Mhm.
So it was one of those things. Yeah.
Great. Well, we're out of time, but thank you guys for talking to me. I appreciate it. Enjoyed the film, and so thank you. Have a good. I guess it's evening now. I was trying to remember what time it was. It's been a long time.
Thank you very much.
It was nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.